Hey there, my name is LexC and thank you so much for joining me for the book review of Good Leaders Ask Great Questions by John C. Maxwell. Make sure you stay tuned for my full review.
To get it back from where it's been, have you thought about all the time you wasted? Is it worth it to try to go through all of it again? Have you thought about it? Have you thought?
So my last book review was actually with The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, which was about 4 months ago. Wherever the bubble pops up, make sure you check that out. That's going to be in the description down below. But now with this book, Good Leaders Ask Great Questions by John C. Maxwell, I actually finished reading this book back on March 26th of 2026. Isn't that crazy? I irritate myself so bad. I finished this book so long ago, but I kind of went through a little phase where I was just tired of posting and tired of making content. So I took myself a little break. But how I happened upon this book is I was given this book by an ex-partner of mine. And the reason why I picked it up is because I've been wanting to get into I'm always looking for ways to improve myself and improve my communication. And with this book, I could do both of those things. And so the title stood out to me when he said I could choose whatever books I wanted, and I chose this one. So the full title of this book is Good Leaders Ask Great Questions, Your Foundation for Successful Leadership. This book was copyrighted in 2014, and there are 287 pages to be read, not including like acknowledgments or conclusions. The way that this book is structured is in 2 parts, and there are 10 chapters total. There are 3 chapters in part 1 and 7 chapters in part 2. The purpose of this book, I'm just going to read it directly off of the back cover. What one thing can you do to revolutionize your leadership and accelerate your professional and personal growth? Ask questions. John Maxwell, #1 New York Times bestselling author, has mastered the art of asking questions, using them to learn and grow, connect with people, challenge himself, improve his team, and develop better ideas. Questions have literally changed Maxwell's life. In Good Leaders Ask Great Questions, he shows how they can change yours, teaching why questions are so important, what questions you should ask yourself as a leader, and what questions you should be asking your team. Maxwell also opened the floodgates and invited people from around the world to ask him any leadership question. He answers 70 of them, the best, including what are the top skills required to lead people through difficult times? How do I get started in leadership? How do I motivate an unmotivated person? How can I succeed working under poor leadership? When is the right time for a successful leader to move on to a new position? How do you move people into your inner circle? No matter whether you are a seasoned leader at the top of your game or a newcomer wanting to take the first steps into leadership, this book will change the way you look at questions and improve your leadership life. So that is the purpose of the book. And I'm very happy with my selection because it speaks to me. And like I said, I want to improve myself just on a personal level, as well as communication being included with that self-development. I'm always looking for ways to get better. And so this book was definitely a great way for me to get better. Now, I don't know if you can see this on camera or not. At least I'm gonna try my best to show you if it will capture it. But I'm flipping through my pages right now, and you can see where I have folded or bent some pages and how many of those folds and bends I have in these pages. So this is a really good book. Anytime I put those little indentations on my book, it's because I found something that was interesting to me or spoke to me. But if I went through all of these, then this video would just be way too long. It would not be a decent length that would hold your attention. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read what each chapter is called, what each part of the book is called, and then what each chapter of the book is called. And then I'm going to give you my top 5 favorite parts of this book. So let's hop into that. So part 1, questions I ask. Chapter 1, why are questions so important? Chapter 2, what questions do I ask myself as a leader? Chapter 3, what questions do I ask my team members? And then part 2, questions leaders ask me. What must I do to lead myself successfully? That's chapter 4. Chapter 5 is how does leadership work? Trying to put this in frame. Chapter 6 is how do I get started in leadership? Chapter 7, how do I resolve conflict and lead challenging people? Chapter 8, how can I succeed working under poor leadership? Chapter 9, how can I successfully navigate leadership transitions? Chapter 10, how can I develop leaders? Chapter 8 is really speaking to me. How can I succeed working under poor leadership? But that is not for this video. That's just some things going on in life. So the parts that stick out to me the most, and I wonder if any of these questions I just asked, these are the names of the chapters, chapter 1 through 10. I wonder if any of those stuck out to you or resonated to you like that one question just did for me. And I do have my phone here with my outline of notes to make sure that I stay on topic. My top five favorite parts of this book. We're going to go to part 1, chapter 1. Part 1 is questions I ask. Chapter 1 is why are questions so important. I'm going to go to page 9. Excuse me, I'm getting a little tongue tied over here. Too often, fear keeps us from being vulnerable and feeling secure enough to ask questions. Isn't it strange how we must surrender being right in order to find what's right? How humility enables us to be authentic, vulnerable, trustworthy, and intimate with others? People are open to those who are open to them. And the reason why this sticks out to me the most is because I recently, and the thing that I'm upset with myself about for waiting so long to do this book review is that, of course, I'm going to have a bit of a different experience or reaction to some of these parts that I picked out compared to back then, comparing to now, right? So recently I'm going through something where as a woman, we go through a lot of changes hormonally, and I'm realizing that as I get older, those hormonal shifts and those mood swings are like more and more devastating is not the word I want to use, but it's the only word that's coming to mind. And what happens is I get super emotional, overly emotional. And I just went through a whole episode where my mind was my worst enemy. And I was just running through all of those fears, and it was causing insecurity for me and just questions about my relationship and things like that. But at the end of the day, it's a fear thing. Too often, fear keeps us from being vulnerable and feeling secure enough to ask questions. A lot of the situations and just communication in general, right? If we just ask questions and be open to what those answers would be, we would be a lot further. But because we have so many fears, and then we write the ending ourselves versus letting the ending be revealed, it causes problems. And for me, being a woman is annoying. That's all I have to say about that. But that's why this part is resonating with me so much, because it's so true. If you can just ask the question, that will dispel whatever fears you have usually. And then what ends up happening is you get the answer to your question, and then you have more questions about that answer. And it leads to curiosity more so than fear. The only reason we have fear a lot of times is because we just don't know certain things. We don't like not knowing. So if you ask a question because you just want to know, and you approach it from that standpoint, then things are a lot less scary, and we don't have to think ourselves into overanalyzing, and we don't have to think ourselves into insecurity, at least for me anyway. My next favorite part is going to be part 1, chapter 3. And the name of that chapter is What Questions Do I Ask My Team Members? I'm going to go to page 71. How do we make the most of this opportunity? People who wait for the one great opportunity often keep waiting. The way to find the best opportunities is to pursue the one at hand. And the reason why I love this one so much, why it's in my top 5, is because I have started to look at life this way for myself. As opposed to waiting for the right time or waiting for certain circumstances, I just go ahead and I explore what is the next interesting thing that I'm interested in on my list. And instead of worrying about, well, what does this mean for my branding? I just realized the cat put this thing in her bed. Girl, I have a microphone over here and she just took this out and put it in her cat nest. My goodness. Anyway, I used to be very worried, and especially as a music artist, I was told by managers and just various music people that, they very much want you to stay within a box. And this is before social media took off the way that it did, but they would be putting a fear, maybe even unknowingly because they were trying to help, but they would be putting fear into my head of, I can't I can't stray too far from the path because then I will confuse people. And so you just have to prepare yourself and stay ready for things to happen versus creating your own things, right? And so it was causing me to not be curious. It was causing me to obsess over one aspect of my music career. And I was not happy because I felt like I was not being allowed to explore, or I was trying to be obedient by not exploring things outside of the immediate realm of what managers and other people told me that I should focus on. And what I realized for myself is I'm happiest when I get to explore my curiosities. And a lot of times, a lot of opportunities I've gotten, it has been because I have ventured into things that had nothing to do with music. And then we found that we shared an interest in music and I got opportunities based off of that. But whenever I was chasing the perfect music opportunity, I was falling flat. When I was just going out and living life and just exploring my interests, I was happier. I am happier and I get more opportunities. So that's why this part sticks out to me so much. That's why it's in my top 5. Let's move on to the next one. We're going to go all the way to page 104. Why am I talking like this? I don't know. But this next one is part 2, chapter 4. Part 2 is questions leaders ask me. So chapter 4 asks the question, what must I do to lead myself successfully? And I'm going to go to page 104. You can't be an effective leader by keeping people at arm's length. You can't mentor them if you aren't close to them. You can't add value if you don't know what they value, and they won't ever go the extra mile for a leader who doesn't care about them. I learned that at age 25, and that's when I made a different choice. I will open my heart to people and try to love them unconditionally. That has caused some of the greatest hurts in my life. It has also created some of my greatest joys. So the bottom line answer to the question about changing your heart toward people is that it is a choice. You must decide to love people and be authentic and vulnerable with them. You must choose to let them into your life so that you can add value to them and they can add value to you. I believe that such a decision will lead to many more wins than losses, both personally and professionally. Once you've been part of a team in which people give not just their minds, but also their hearts, you won't ever want to go back. You'll always want to be open with people. And I think that's just so beautiful. So this is chapter 4, which is what must I do to lead myself successfully? And that particular section is how does one change one's heart to increase the desire to add value to and serve others? So to answer the question, what must I do to lead myself successfully? It says, let me see if I can find it actually. Leadership is servanthood is one of the themes that stands out most in this, right? But what it says is, what must I do to lead myself successfully? If you can't lead yourself effectively, everything else in your life will be a struggle. And the reason why this particular excerpt stands out to me is because when I am being my most selfish, when I am being my most closed-minded, I am less happy for it. So on the same token, when I'm closed off to other people and I'm not open or I'm not welcoming or inviting, it causes me to not be close to people. It causes me to be standoffish, and it causes, there's like no chance for collaboration, or there's no chance to add value to people, because how can I be happy to help people when I'm not happy to open up to people? I very much went through or am getting out of a period in my life where I battle with how closely I should let people get to me. And it's a protective thing because of people in my life, and I want to protect certain aspects of my life. But I'm realizing that the reason why I was starting to regress into my shell, and then to speak back on the fears and being a woman and my mind being my greatest enemy at times, especially during mood swings and hormone swings, I was realizing that I was just playing into fear, and playing into fear and isolating myself is a very dangerous place to be. How am I going to be a leader? How am I going to want people to trust me to lead them if I don't trust people enough to be able to open up to them, if I'm not being vulnerable with them? Why should people care if I'm not trying to show too much care? So that's why that part resonates with me. And yeah, that's why this section is in my top 5. Moving on, we're going to go to part 2, chapter 5. And chapter 5 says, it asks the question, how does leadership work? And I'm going to read from page 127 and 129. Page 127, I highlighted the sentence, leaders who decline to make decisions create insecurity among followers and undermine their own leadership. Page 129, failure to make a decision after due consideration of all the facts will quickly brand a man as unfit for a position of responsibility. Not all of your decisions will be correct. None of us is perfect. But if you get into the habit of making decisions, experience will develop your judgment to a point where more and more of your decisions will be right. And as a result, you will become a better leader. But I love that. Leaders who decline to make decisions create insecurity among followers and undermine their own leadership. And this is, again, playing on, we cannot allow ourselves to be fearful. Otherwise, we're not going to do certain things that are going to allow people to want to be led to us, allow people to want to be led by us. And if we're not making decisions, we're not being a leader. A lot of times people are waiting for someone to come along and tell them what to do. If you say you want to be a leader, or scratch that, if you are wanting to successfully lead yourself, there are a series of decisions you have to make for yourself within your life to maintain or to acquire the standard, the quality of living that you want, right? So on the same token, if you have a certain vision and you envision it being a certain way, how can you build up to that vision and bring it into fruition, bring it into reality, if you are not making decisions that will lead towards the progression of that, you know? So someone who is unable to make decisions, they create insecurity among followers and undermine their own leadership. Essentially, you're shooting yourself in the foot when you choose not to make decisions, or you overanalyze so much that you become stagnant, or you over-research so much that you become stagnant. And just now in thinking that, right, there was a time where I would read so many books and just be taking in information, or listen to so many podcasts and just be taking in information. And it got me to a point where I was actually beginning to be exhausted because I was taking in so much, but what was I doing with all of that information that I was taking in? Let me adjust this a little bit. So I'm taking in all this information, but I'm not valuing the knowledge that I just took in because I'm not applying any of it to my life. And so I'm not seeing any progress. And what's the point of taking in all this knowledge if we're not going to put it into play, if we're not going to gain experience, right? So you can't be stuck in overthinking, overanalyzing, over-researching. You have to make a decision and then move on it. Whether it was the right decision or the wrong decision, only experience and time will tell. But once you make a decision, you can either stand on it and it turns out to be right, or you can make it right if it turns out to be wrong. You can not like flip-flop or anything, but you have the ability to, once you recognize something may have been the wrong choice, you can choose to go the other direction. Time is going to go by anyway, but you don't want to spend time standing still. It's actually better to spend your time making wrong decisions and learning from them than it is to just be standing in fear of whether or not you're going to make the right choice or not. And I used to definitely be caught up in that state of mind where I was so afraid to make a mistake. But the artist way, which I mentioned earlier, that actually helped me to see that in creation, especially as a creative person, I don't have to be right or wrong. I don't have to be good or bad. I just have to be. I just have to do. And then after it's done, I can tweak it. But if you never do, you never have a baseline for what you want to get done, for how you want to move, for the direction you want to go next. So that's why that section is part of my top 5. Now let's go to the last section that made it to my top 5. And this is going to be on 3 separate pages. Pages 256, 257, and 258. This is from part 2, chapter 9. Chapter 9 asks the question, how can I successfully navigate leadership transitions? And this section of the chapter asks, what should be the legacy of a successful leader? So on page 256, legacies that matter are connected with people. 100 years from now, all that will matter is the people that you connected with in such a way that you added value and meaning to their lives. Page 257, people are what matter in this world, not money or fame or buildings or organizations or institutions, only people. And now page 258, a legacy is created only when leaders put their people into a position to do great things without them. The legacy of successful leaders lives on through the people they touch along the way. The only things you can change permanently are the hearts of the people you lead. And why does this resonate with me so much? Because I think for me, I've really been working hard on changing my heart posture this year. I do follow the teachings of Jesus Christ, Christian, all of that good stuff. I believe in God. And I do this thing every year where, thanks to Jesse Itzler, it's called 2026 in 26 minutes. 2025, it was 2025 in 25 minutes. But there's one big life-defining thing or motto that you live by. There are 4 winning habits you develop, and then there are like 10 to 12 adventures that you go on throughout the year. My one big year-defining motto that I settled on for 2026 is to love like God. And the reason why I chose that is because I want to understand, how does God deal with us? What makes his love so great? And then how can I reflect that love? That love flows out of me into other people, and people know that God exists because of how I love them. And it must be the love of God that's like fueling this whole thing, right? So when I think about that, and I think about how I need to change the posture of my heart, I was in a place where I was very shut off, very closed off from people. And in working on my heart posture, I'm working on being softer. I'm working on being more open and vulnerable with people. I am an open book, but I don't volunteer things. So I'm working on being more generous and being more giving. I am a giving person, but I was not a cheerful giver. So that's a habit that I'm working on for this quarter in particular. But when it says what should be the legacy of a successful leader, and legacies that matter are connected with people, and it's the hearts of the people that you changed along the way, that's why this part resonates with me so much. Because in my journey to improve my heart posture, I'm realizing that if I want to leave a successful legacy, if I want to leave a good legacy, then not only do I need to lead myself properly and be good to myself, if I want to be a good leader, I have to lead people properly and care about people properly. And that's the overall goal. And I don't need to count. I don't need to have a quota of how many lives I'm touching. I just need to be good to people. Be good to myself so that I'm not giving from an empty cup, but then be cheerful, be excited about giving to others and helping others. And my legacy will shape itself, and it will be what I envision for it to be, which is just and this is kind of dark to think about, but when I think about my funeral, I want a lot of people to show up. And I want the common theme to be that LexC was always willing to pour into everybody who was in her life. LexC was always willing to help someone, always willing to give advice, always willing to teach something, always willing to be there for people. That's what I want my legacy to be. And I can't believe that I lost sight of that for so long, because it's like, if you want to be there for people and help people, of course you got to have a certain heart posture for that. You got to be open in a certain way. And I did lose sight for a little bit, but happy to report that I'm working on my heart posture, and I am becoming the woman that I envision myself, that I hope aligns with God's purpose for me in my life. So those are my top 5 favorite moments, favorite quotes, favorite sections of the book. Good Leaders Ask Great Questions, Your Foundation for Successful Leadership. Overall, very great book, very easy to read. The chapters were not too long, the sections were not too long, so I felt like I was making steady progress throughout. Very conversational, the way that it's written, the words weren't too difficult, and it was just a really nicely paced book. So tell me, would you read this book based on everything that I shared with you? Do you think that this is something you would be interested in? And if there are any books that you would like for me to read next, you can suggest them in the comment section down below. But I will tell you that the next book I have a review for is called A Piece of Cake by Cupcake Brown. I got to give a shout out to my hairstylist and friend, Ebony. She is a luxury hairstylist in Atlanta, Georgia. She gifted me the book. It was a very good read. So that's going to be the next review. It's already done. I finished reading it like a week or two ago. So be on the lookout for that. But let me know any other book suggestions you might have for me. Put that in the comment section. Put that in the episode comments if you're listening on any podcast streaming platforms. But yeah, thank you so much for tuning in to my book review of Good Leaders Ask Great Questions by John C. Maxwell. My name is LexC. Until next time, peace.
Nickel in the garden, baby, you a 10 plus 3, I know it's hard. Thinking about the line, probably had your heart hardened. You the sunshine in my world in the darkness. Baby, I ain't here to play games, even though I keep you coming out the wood. Know you starting, yeah, and starting now, I'm for sure. Open up your world to more doors. 1, 4, 3, that's you and me. Wanna do it forever, that's 4 score, and I'm yours.
Have you thought about